All right, thank you. The next person on my list is Kevin Mahalchik.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Mahalik. I work at Sharp Tooling Company and Personify Pets, I guess. It's a machine shop, but we design new products. We've designed a couple pumps for National Fuel and some tools for them, and then we make our own products for the pet supply industry and sell them through e-commerce. Um, I don't know, or the only really background in engineering I have is I was on the robotics team and went to engineering school for a little bit, but I decided to kind of go through the entrepreneur aspect of it. So now I kind of run kind of the business, but also the new product development stuff at Sharp Tooling Company. It's a lot of fun. Um, yeah, that's about it.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Next, Michael Garrison.
Good morning or good afternoon now. So I'm Mike Garrison. I work at Moog. I see Jim Van Oss is on as well, one of my colleagues. I work in the Space and Defense Group. I've been there for 20 some years and worked in a variety of different engineering derived roles, starting as project engineer, working designs and product introduction, and then transitioned through my career to engineering management, and now focused on operations and operational excellence and strategy deployment for the space sector.
Very nice. The next person is Sam Britton.
Hey y'all, my name is Sam Brinton. I use they and them as my pronouns. The technical background of my work is I am a trained nuclear engineer, thus the radiation symbol. I work for a nuclear waste startup company known as Deep Isolation, working to keep folks safe from nuclear waste. But I do that by night because by day I work for an LGBTQ suicide prevention lifeline. So kind of the best of both worlds in that I get to do my social work and I get to do my technical work all at the same time. So really excited for the conversation and looking forward to all the great things we're going to learn.
Thank you, Sam. The next person is Sean Thompson.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sean Thompson. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for a Buffalo company called PCB Piezotronics. We're now part of a large Fortune 500 company called Amphenol Corporation. We have about 1,350 employees. I've got 80 engineers that work for me here in Buffalo, New York. And I've got, on my departments, I have about 250 employees that do technology manufacturing, semiconductor style wafer, MEMS, sensors, microelectronics, manufacturing around the country. Before doing this work, I spent about 17 years working in medical device development, and then I ran a 3D CAD CAM software business, a company that made 3D CAD software globally. I had about 15,000 global customers that did that. A big area of interest for me is engineering careers. I lectured for 26 years at a program called the Engineering Career Institute, which guides students into how to join the engineering workforce and how to find careers in engineering and how to navigate that career path. There was a textbook that we wrote on that program as well. And I'm on the advisory boards for the University of Washington, Alfred State College, Erie Community College, Niagara County Community College, Erie Community, and Buffalo State College as well for the engineering and engineering technology programs.
All right, thank you. Next person is Jim Van Oss.
Hi, I'm Jim Van Oss. I work with my friend Mike Garrison at Moog. I've been at Moog almost 37 years now. I have a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. I've taught as an undergrad, graduate, postgrad, an adjunct at University of Buffalo off and on over the years. I've worked in both design engineering and information technology. I've worked on I've got designs flying on Space Station and formerly the Space Shuttle. I was Chief Information Officer at Moog for 13 years. I currently serve on the advisory board for the University of Buffalo Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, as well as the Niagara Aerospace Museum. And right now I'm working on product lifecycle management, which is basically how you organize the work engineers do and relate it to the products they make, all the way from the inception through manufacturing and through enterprise resource planning.
Thank you very much. The next guest will be Stacy Cubitt.
Hey guys, my name is Stacy Cubitt. I own a small construction administration, construction management company in Buffalo, New York. We've been in business for 3 years, about 13 people. And we do mainly highway transportation, construction oversight work for agencies like the DOT, the Thruway Authority, the NFTA, and then local municipalities. I graduated from North Carolina High School and I went to UB. I have my bachelor's in engineering and my MBA from UB, and I have been an adjunct there for their drafting classes, their senior level microstation, Bentley microstation 3D programs. And I currently sit on the department advisory board for the civil side. And then I also am on the advisory board at North Tonawanda High School for their engineering programs. So. Andrew, you're muted.
The next guest will be William Andrews.
I'm currently the president and CEO of Monofrex. It's a refractory company down in the southern tier in Faulkner, New York. I live in the Buffalo area still, so I've been director of engineering, director of R&D at a number of companies, including PCBs, so some of the companies on here. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering, but I've specialized in a lot of other coursework to try to make up for that in certain areas like mechanical and thermal. I serve on the advisory board for the Center for Advanced Ceramics at Alfred University. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So we just want to take just a few seconds to introduce ourselves, me and my friend Josh. We are running this panel today. My name is Andrew Preetz. I'm a current junior at Alden High School, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm going to give it to Josh just for a second.
My name is Josh Clonerins. I'm a senior at Alden High School, going to UB for mechanical engineering. Pronouns are also he, him.
All right, and then we really just want to break the ice real quick, as some of you never ever met. So we want to ask, does pineapple belong on pizza? Now we're opening the floor for any debate, any strong opinions on this. So go ahead and battle it out just for a couple minutes here.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely. A Hawaiian pizza with ham is great.
Never
I
had
agree.
it.
It's
That
definitely-
is-
So it's great because my daughter insists on pineapple and pizza. She lives in the Caribbean. She insists on having pineapple on her pizza, but it's a negotiation point because she can get pineapple if I can get anchovies.
All right.
Both of them together. I expected.
I'm definitely with the majority opinion that pineapple does have a place on pizza. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to Josh real quick, and he's gonna ask our first question today.
So the first question we got lined up, this is just anyone can answer. What did you want to be when you were in high school or middle school?
Well, actually, I'll start out with I wanted to be in the medical field. Went to RIT my first 2 years, got my associates in medical technology, but then changed to engineering and transferred to UB. Got my BS, MS at UB, and haven't regretted the switch. Although my first thought was medical technology type area.
So that's funny that Jim, that you said that, because I similarly, my entire family was nurses and a doctor, and so I thought I was going to go into the medical field as well. And I took AP Bio in school with the full intention of going into that field. And I was a big motorhead, building hot rod cars and stuff when I was in high school. So I switched as well early on and became a mechanical engineer.
I was growing up near in Sanford, Florida, just middle of Florida. So I got to almost it felt like every week, watch the shuttle take off or something be taking off there in Florida. So I was certain I was going to be an aerospace engineer, and then realized that I liked dealing with the current planet we were on. I really liked space, but I really was hoping that we were going to still have a planet to be here for. So I moved more into the environmental work and then into nuclear engineering myself. So moved from the stars to the planet.
Yeah, I wanted to be a professional hockey player, but if anyone's seen me skate, they would say I made the right choice. It's not pretty. I've always been fascinated by engineering and being able to figure out how things work and solve those kind of problems, and it's just always drawn me. And I will say I have an industrial engineering degree, but I hold the engineers I've worked with in such high regard because I've seen them do incredible things, and that just draws me deeper into this field.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I work for a family business, so I kind of grew up working part-time for R.J. Watson. So I kind of knew I always wanted to get into some sort of engineering. So I ended up going to Clarkson University for civil engineering. If I had like a second choice, I would say maybe I would have gone into like software or aeronautical or something like that. But I'm glad I did my civil engineering degree.
Yeah, so I wanted to be a meteorologist all through high school, and but I really like solving problems, and at that time I hadn't figured out how that was going to work out with meteorology. So my dad is a mechanical engineer, so I grew up as the oldest of three girls doing all the projects with him. So when I had my internships in high school, I was able to do drafting. I did some piezometric sensor internships, and then once I was able to work with a contractor out in the field, I realized I liked the changing pace of construction. Different people, different projects, different problems every day, not just design problems off the shelf that we've done before. So that's why I really liked focusing on that side of things.
This is Jim. I'll go next. So I knew in high school that I wanted to be an engineer, although my guidance counselors didn't agree with me, but I didn't really pay attention to them and went on to engineering school anyway, and got both a bachelor's and master's degree at UB. And I'm not sorry I did it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I would recommend to anybody getting their engineering degree to consider a graduate degree, because I think that really sort of rounds out your education. I don't feel that you learn enough as an engineer as an undergrad, and you need to get at least a master's degree. I don't know about PhDs. That might be a bit too much, but I would highly encourage people to get a master's.
Yeah, I would echo that same. I grew up in a household where my dad was a mechanical engineer, and just was exposed to engineering. He worked for IBM. And so I got to experience some of the things that he was working on, developing inkjet printers and the first PCs and those kind of things. And, that showed me how he applied those skills to real life things like building motorcycles and go-karts and other things. So that combination convinced me that mechanical engineering was a good general purpose degree to start with. And I totally agree with Jim's point that I went on to do a master's degree where I got some practical application in a thesis program and research, lab research environment to apply that before then going out into a career. So I would definitely agree with that from Jim's perspective.
Yeah, I want to. Jim said my favorite thing, and I don't want to say anything that's kind of too awkward. But Jim said he ignored his guidance counselor, and I think that's probably the best advice you're going to get. As you're looking for where to go with it, I've seen so many students get just sort of because people don't really understand what engineering really even is, and they get like some really bum guidance counselor information and advice. I think doing the stuff like you're doing right now and talking to real world engineers out in industry and understanding what it really is that then you can go back and teach the guidance counselors what engineering really is.
And to that point, Sean, I'd say if you have an opportunity now in high school for an internship, even if it's unpaid, which I don't even know if they're allowed to do those anymore, do it and try different ones. Every summer, go to a different company unless you found your passion, but don't be scared to change. And then through your college career, whether you stay local and have contacts or you go away, tap into your network and see where you can get placed and have that exposure during those 4 years of undergrad and through high school as much as you can, because I think it helps really focus you to understand what you're learning in college is the most important and how to apply it as you're doing it, and then it helps you with that master's degree decision later down the road too.
Okay, so if that's I mean, no one else has anything else to say. What subjects should like people focus on in high school or like grade school, like in general?
This is Jim. I'll go. So physics and math would be very applicable. So in engineering school, you'll have to take calculus. I don't know about my other engineering colleagues on the phone. I found that once I finished calculus and got through school, you really didn't use much of it. You need to really understand it, but I generally use a digital computer for most of the calculus type things that were happening. So I didn't really have to solve the problems, but I had to understand the problems. And so having that background is good. But engineering is an applied physics degree, so you really need to know physics, whether you're nuclear or electric. I mean, I ended up doing a lot of magnetic analysis, which is not taught in engineering school, at least not in mechanical engineering discipline. So I had to learn it. So the one thing that engineering school teaches you is you learn how to learn. And so it gives you a good background. And then from there, you can branch out and figure out what you need to know in your job. But I would say, physics and calculus are physics and math, if you will. They're good. If you can take any kind of CAD, that's always great. That sort of thing. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Jim that I think physics is the number one. I think one of the and the math, of course, you have to take the math. One of the mistakes I think that the guidance counselors, I'm just going to build off that prior comment. What a lot of people do is they have students who are really good at math and really enjoy math, and they tell them, well, you should go be an engineer. And the danger of that is that's like telling someone that's good at sewing that they should be a surgeon. And that's literally just one tool in the toolbox that you use. And there's a whole other world of what engineering is. So I want to add on to what Jim said. I agree with him 100% on the physics and the calculus. But I think that any of the tech classes that you can take, any of the shop classes that you can take, because the best engineers that we hire, and I've hired hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of engineers, and the best engineers are the ones that know how to operate a machine, and they know how to operate a lathe, and they know how to cut metal, and they know what that means. So when they're designing parts, they really understand that hands-on stuff.
Sam, we can't hear you.
Let's try that again. Can you hear me now? Perfect. Sorry about that. Well, it was really brilliant what I just said, but no one cares. So I couldn't agree more with my colleagues here. Although physics and math are absolutely critically important in order to survive school and get through it and actually, have your space, I think the tech classes which were mentioned are really, really important. I did CAD and CAM all the way through my high school days, and I don't use that at all now, but the ability to see an object and create it virtually was something that would be translated into a lot of the other issues that I would be working on. I will also claim out to some of you who are like, oh no, not, I was about to swear, not in front of high schoolers. I'm not really great at these tech classes. I won the best in auto class for 4 years in a row, and my teacher kept wondering how in the world I was doing it because I hated getting my hands dirty. I could not stand touching the engine. So I found the kid who really liked getting his hands dirty, and I said, I will help you get an A. You and me will be partners. I will show you what's wrong with this engine, but I don't want to touch it. And it was a perfect solution because that's exactly what some of the engineering is. You don't actually have to know, you don't have to actually do some of these things. You have to know how they work, because that is going to be how you actually create some of these big new ideas. So to those of you who are like, oh no, I'm not really sure if I'm really great at this exact space, study. I know that that's a nerdy thing to say coming from a person, but like study it and know it so well that you can manage it, because that is engineering management, which is what you're going to really want in the end.
Yeah, to kind of echo what's already been said, I've met plenty of engineers who know how to design a product from the theoretical standpoint, but maybe don't necessarily know how they're built. So knowing how a CNC machine works, or how to weld, or other kinds of technology in terms of how the product gets manufactured, that's just going to make you a much better engineer. And to kind of talk about the preparation part, I took AP Calc in high school, and I just remember, it just made taking that in college that much easier, and you kind of have a leg up and when you're in college. So that's it.
Yeah, to build on those thoughts, the anything you can do in terms of problem solving and critical thinking skills and communication. So, you can be some of the best engineers have a hard time sharing their concepts and their designs because they're not good at communicating. So take every opportunity possible to communicate your thoughts, to share presentations, to lead presentations, because those will be key skills along with problem solving and critical thinking to build on the physics and math background that we talked about.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the ability to present, work in groups. I know a lot of the extracurriculars, I think that is a great place because those give you examples that you can use when you're interviewing. That's examples you can use on your resume. And most of the competitions now have a paper component as far as how to present your data in the written format and a presentation format so that you can work on that public speaking part of it. So I would definitely promote the extracurriculars, groups, anything that gets you with other people.
Let me add something else. I know I started. So teaching other people is a really good skill. And I was terrified of public speaking when I was in high school. That was the worst thing you could do to me. And so I took a job as a TA teaching Fortran, which you may or may not have heard of. Mike Garrison has heard of it. As an undergrad and again as a grad student. And so that got me up in front of a bunch of students who were freshmen. I was a senior. And so teaching is a very helpful thing to do. And you really don't, and I taught a solid mechanics course. I learned you don't really know something until you teach it. And I'm sure the teachers would agree with that. You think you take a course, you get an A, you think you know it. You don't really know it. You need to teach it. If you can teach something to somebody, then you'll really master it. And that's a really good, another skill you could think of that you could work on.
I'll second the extracurricular activity stuff, because that can introduce you to a lot of the stuff you'd work with in engineering school, and then as you go on. Like I know, for example, in some of my first few classes, like a lot of kids had never even seen an Arduino before or knew anything about it. So when they get introduced with that stuff, it would seem to be really stressful on them. So like, for example, at Alden, I know we have the robotics team that's great great way to get an introduction into, basic mechanical, basic electrical, and basic programming stuff, so that when that stuff doesn't come up or when it does come up in school, you're not like, it's not brand new to you. You at least have some sort of an introduction to it to make it easier on you.
Just a quick little thing. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We will be taking about a 5 to 10 minute little like midpoint, and the next, I'd say 10 minutes. So at 12:40, we'll be answering some questions, and we'll be going on to talk about other things. But our next question from the leads of this panel is really, do grades matter that much, and to what extent will they impact your future? I know a lot of kids, especially my peers, they worry about, that 0.5% extra on their average, but does that really make a huge difference later on, or impact later in your engineering career? So
it'll be potentially controversial, but this was one of the most important questions that I had in my life. I have asked multiple people who hired me what my grades did and how they were influential into me being hired. And I also, of course, worked with my admissions counselor afterwards and said, like, how does all of this actually fit in? Yes, the grades are important. Having a baseline foundational work is critical, but what has just been said about all the extracurriculars is more critical. And I say this with 2 graduate degrees from MIT. It is not that I was the best at the subject. It was that I knew how to use it. That is what we're actually trying to train in engineering. We are not trying to train, you to know that perfect calculus equation. We're trying to train you to do something with it to make the world a better place. And so there's of course a widespread opinions. You have to have some type of a minimum to try to make sure that people understand that you could survive college calculus classes, to be honest. But there is no like perfect space that if you had 2 people, one with perfect grades and one with slightly less grades but great extracurriculars, you will take the extracurriculars person. And this comes from a person who did pretty well, but let's be honest, I spent a lot more time with my American Society of Mechanical Engineers and my American Nuclear Society and the extracurriculars, because that was what was going to get me the job, and that's what did in the end. So
yeah, I gotta agree with what Sam said. That was brilliantly said. In my opinion, the grades are useful for one thing. It'll help you get into the college that you want to go to. That's it. And then once you're there, those are your high school grades. And then college grades, the only thing, and Sam kind of talked about this when saying it, in my opinion, again, this is just me, the grades are only useful as a tiebreaker. And I mean, to really be a tiebreaker, you've got to have 2 people that are completely identical in every possible way before I will even look at a grade. And here's this is my way over the top answer to this. If a huge college like MIT, like Sam mentioned, or any school, University of Buffalo, or any school at all, if that school is willing to put their name on a piece of paper and certify that this person is hereby trained as an engineer, it is none of my business to say they're good enough or not good enough because they had a 2.2 versus a 3.4. I don't care. All I care about is if someone knows what the pointy end of a screwdriver is used for.
I would agree with both of you. Through my career, grades were never really a factor. I wasn't a top student, but I took the more challenging courses. I wanted to broaden my background so I would be more applicable to any job that I applied to. And at the interviews, it was more exactly what experience have I gained over the years, not my grades. So grades are important, but you really need to focus on what you're heading towards, and especially in high school, taking the advanced, the AP courses to give you that background to try to do internships where you can. I mean, that's really where I started out, was a rod man at an engineering firm when I was a sophomore in high school. So that gave me exposure to engineering. I thought maybe in the back of my mind I would continue with engineering at some point, but got into the medical field. But I did take the higher level courses while I was at RIT if I decided to change to engineering, which I ultimately did. So it saved me a lot of time transferring to UB because I already had a lot of the core courses taken care of when I was at RIT, because I chose to take the higher level courses, not the easier courses.
I think as a hiring manager over the course of the last 10 years, resumes and the format of a resume has changed that supports what everybody is saying. I mean, typically that first year, if you don't have any experience, you're putting your GPA and your schooling at the top of your resume. But once you have something to put on your resume that is substantial and related to what you're trying to pursue, internship or final career, your schooling goes to the bottom of your resume now. It's not that, and that kind of represents where everyone is coming from, saying, yeah, it's important, you have to get the grades, but the tangible experience that you have is going to be what's going to set you above. But to the point of Andrew, like students going for that extra 0.5%, there's something to be said about that. That also shows that tenacity, right? So even if that 0.5% is between a 3 and a 3.05 at the end of the day, or a 95 and a 95.5% in high school, that's something that there's something to be said about that. And that's also the kind of student that's going to make it through engineering school, regardless if they're super smart or they're just on that edge. I also have a lot of friends that in high school, their grades were not there. And then once you get into the curriculum of something that you're actually focused in and you have a slight pathway, you're going to have more of a focus. And your grades will reflect that. It'll come along. So don't ever feel like I can't be an engineer, I'm not smart enough because I get 83s, or I barely passed my physics class. There's no way I can do this dream of being an engineer anymore. It's don't let that stop you. But you guys are already on this phone call and doing these type of panels, so you have the tenacity to continue to push forward. It doesn't mean you're a slacker because you get a bad grade. It has to follow through with your work ethic, and I think that's something that you see with most engineers.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that. So I think the grades will get you into engineering school and to some degree keep you in engineering school. I barely got into engineering school. My grades were 88, I think, in high school. And I don't remember what I got on the SATs. And then when I was in engineering school, I got a lot of C's and 1D in heat transfer, which I ultimately was a TA for. But in the courses that I really liked that were part of my major, mechanical engineering, in the junior senior year, I got A's. And then in grad school, I barely got into grad school because I was focused on working and hockey and things in undergrad. But I got in well enough because I could communicate. And in grad school, I proved them all wrong. I got 4.0 straight through. So if you really apply yourself, you can do well. But you have to. The grades are important because they will get you in. Bad grades will keep you out. So you don't want to have really bad grades because you won't get into engineering school, because you do have to prove some sort of aptitude and competence. But I agree. You need to also predominantly participate in the extracurriculars. I was president of ASME of my senior class. I was on the mini Baja team, involved in lots of extracurricular activities. I was on the ski team. So employers look for that. You need to figure out how you're going to differentiate yourself with everybody else with a bachelor's degree in engineering once you get your bachelor's degree. And so the things like extracurricular activities, clubs, things like that will help you really excel and really focus on your interests.
Yeah, I don't think you can teach work ethic. So, You could be a brilliant engineer, a 3.9 GPA, but if you don't have a good work ethic or, the so-called soft skills, like dealing with people, change management, dealing with conflict, that kind of stuff, if you have those skills and you have a 2.9, I think most employers will take that over the one who doesn't have those skills.
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it on to a open discussion time between panelists, viewers, and their questions. So I'm going to ask this is going to be 30 seconds per panelist member. What type of college would you go to? Would you start off at like community college, or would you go right to a college like UB, or strive to get into a very like prestigious college and spend a lot of money? Like, what would be your best advice when looking into colleges? There are a lot of juniors on this call today, so we want to know your opinions on that.
So I'll jump in. Because this is, I'm on a lot of college advisory boards. One of the college education over the recent years has really changed a lot, and I kind of griped a little bit about the overemphasis in math and the de-emphasis of applied engineering problem solving. And Stacy really talked about engineering as problem solving. That's what we do. My favorite solution is actually an engineering technology program like Alfred State University, RIT, Buffalo State, something like that, with a bachelor's degree in engineering technology, as opposed to engineering science. And I like them both. They're both great. And I have a science degree from UB, but I like the applied aspect because I think there's a real shortage and need for that in industry right now, because there's been an overemphasis on just pushing everybody to the very, very heavily theoretical math-based engineering programs. Now, one of the, I think it was Jim said that you should go get a master's degree as well. My favorite path is get a bachelor's degree in engineering technology and a master's degree in engineering science, because that'll round you out with all the high-level research and the much more in-depth theory and the higher level degree. But you'll have this incredible hands-on application of engineering problem solving. That's what I like. That's what I like. And I think it really matters, like the kind of engineering you want to do. If you want to be a theoretical engineer, or you want to be a researcher or a strict design engineer, you should go to get a BS degree in engineering. Absolutely. Traditional engineering like UB, Clarkson, U of R, MIT, something like that. If you want to be more hands-on, like a manufacturing engineer or something like that, I think a technology school is a way to go.
Yeah, I wish I met Sean when I was trying to make this decision. I agree with everything he said. I got an associate's degree first because I wanted the lab work. I wanted to be hands-on, and I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go in. And doing that, learning the engineering science and all of that helped me to make a decision on which direction I wanted to go in based on what I liked. So yeah, I echo everything he said.
It really depends on the person too. I mean, if you're talking about a 2-year school, community college, and then transferring to 4-year, and you have to take into consideration who you are as a person and some of your other priorities outside of engineering. I mean, I know that at the end of the day, your goal is to have the engineering degree, but I was accepted to schools abroad in different places across the United States. And at the end of the day, I knew I wanted to be home for when my sisters graduated high school. So that those things play a role in your decision too. So don't be scared to have other values impact what you decide to do for college. I do like the technical side of things as well. I always said I wished I would have done the 2-year first and then transferred to UB, because those first 2 years of engineering school are not those applied classes. That's going to be your math and your physics, and it seems to me, I ended up taking some summer classes at community colleges to get them out of the way, because it's very difficult to finish all the credits that you need. If those basic math and chemistry, physics classes are more difficult, so I do like the 2-year to the 4-year option, in transferring. But also look at what those programs have outside of the classroom when you're trying to pick the college. What teams do they have? How do they place? And then get involved in your freshman year.
Yeah, there's lots of different paths to get to an engineering degree, and a lot of it depends on your interests, your aptitude, your means, your willingness to leave home or stay home. I was not willing to leave home. I was a commuter student at UB. I've seen a lot of people get 2-year degrees at ECC or similar schools in mechanical technology, electrical technology, what have you. Those are not transferable into higher level programs. So if you do go the community college route, which I think is a perfectly valid route to go, please check with your university that you plan to go to as to what they will accept, because you don't want to get yourself on a road to invest 2 years in a degree that you can't leverage for the next degree. So my best advice to you would be, if you get a 2-year degree in engineering science at ECC, that will give you an off-ramp to UB, or just an off-ramp if you don't feel like going to school anymore, but at least you have something you can use for the future. So please consider that when you think about what you're going to do for school. I like the university route. I like the theoretical part. I was always very hands-on myself. Matter of fact, I still run a workshop in my basement and do all kinds of things. But it's everybody's different, and so you're going to have a different way of doing it. UB is a good deal. State University is a good deal financially. It's much cheaper than the private schools by not quite an order of magnitude, but it's quite a bit cheaper. But there are some other good technology schools, like RIT is an excellent school where you can get a Bachelor of Science. So you have to really explore where your interests are, where the fit is for you. So you may not fit well at UB or RIT. You may fit well at some other school like Cornell or Purdue or something like that. So, think about all those things. Those are all things you have to consider.
To build on that really, really quickly in the 30 seconds, which is you also, the earlier you can figure out kind of how much you're going to use the name of your school in your job is actually also a really important part. So I noticed that I didn't really mention MIT that much before we got to that grades part, because I'm really tired of the stupid MIT engineer always talking about coming from MIT. But the reason that I mentioned it in that part was because that's what I use now as a signifier of Sam knows what they're doing. And I work in policy. I work in engineering policy. So my job is to help Congress understand what's going on. Congress would not have accepted a community college type of degree because they wouldn't have known how to trust it. So the transfer of trust based on the name of your college is also partially important. But as was said before, I didn't do that till grad school because I was poor and I didn't want to pay through the nose for a private school. So use the scholarships that you can, get that foundational degree, and then whatever your last degree will be in, have that be from whatever school you think will be what's important for your field. So for example, in my field, because I'm a little bit more research and policy oriented, MIT was a good choice, but I would never have chosen it if, for example, I was trying to do aerospace. I would have gone to Emory-Riddle, right? I would have chosen the school based on my field and how it was going to be applied after. So just as a note, you do not have to, even though I'm coming from this private school place, you do not have to be kind of doing that work if that's not best for your field. So know your field.
All right, we're going to open up to some of the questions that were shared in the chat. I'll read them off. So the first question was from Justin Kruk. What inspired you to become an engineer? This will be very quickly. We're going to have to go through quite a few questions, so 30 seconds response time.
Well, I think what inspired me to be an engineer, starting out, I think I mentioned earlier, as a sophomore in high school, rod man at an engineering firm, being familiar with engineering and like the math, like the engineering, like the field work, like solving problems, all those have been touched on. So when I went to RIT and the medical technology, I was taking, as I mentioned, higher level courses, and then transferred to UB because at that time, RIT was not an accredited school to get my licensed professional engineering taken care of. So I transferred to UB as at that time, I think one of 2 colleges in New York State that were accredited that I could continue to get my PE in the shortest amount of time. And that was a push by my boss at the time because he wanted me to become a partner in the firm and I needed my PE. So I was pushed in the direction of getting a PE, not so much, the grades. I was already in engineering, so it made it that much quicker with the experience that I had or that I was getting from the firm to qualify to take the PE even sooner than recommended, only because of my experience in the field. So outside work does add a lot too, not so much the grades.
And just that would be ABET accreditation is like for the PE is one of the ones you would want to look for, I believe. So.
Yeah, actually RIT is accredited now, but at the time when I was there, it was not. I think it was UB and Cornell were the only 2 in the state that were accredited at that time. And the accreditation just shortened the time period to get your PE. I could continue going to RIT, but it would have added 2 more years to qualification to take the PE. So again, it was a choice I made, switching to UB more for the accreditation, not so much the engineering, because that was my focus when I transferred there.
All right. The next question comes from Kaylee Andrigurski. So she says, if you are going to college in an engineering major, how easy is it to change your engineering majors if you feel you are starting to enjoy a different type of engineering?
Easy if early. Easiest answer for this is it's easy if it's early. The longer you study your field, the more specific you may get, unless you have a more as has been mentioned earlier, like an engineering science degree that can kind of keep you open longer. But as you start to specialize, those classes rarely transfer. So and they get even more specific as you get to graduate school. However, you can always make the switch if you decide to go to grad school from one field to another in general, if you can claim to a person that you have obviously learned the engineering skills that will still be applicable. So you have 2 major points, the first 2 years, and then maybe after your degree, as you're going to your next education, those would be the easiest points to change.
Yeah, the first 2 years are generally the same, no matter what engineering discipline you're in. I think there's an exception for electrical. They flip around some of the math courses of it, but it's pretty easy. Once you get into the 3rd, 4th year, as Sam mentioned, you're going to have to redo some stuff, and it may cost you a year or 2. Other questions people may ask is, so for instance, I have a mechanical engineering degree. What if I want to get an aerospace engineering degree? Because they're very closely related. Or civil and environmental. Those are also closely related. So you might consider a dual degree, and that may cost you an extra 6 months only. It's not a complete, no, going from mechanical to chemical is a big start over in the last 2 years. But going from mechanical to aerospace is almost nothing. And you can even add that degree if you so choose. So, you have to talk to your advisors in the school what your options are.
And that is the benefit of degrees like mechanical is, as Sam mentioned, if you start in a fairly broad degree like mechanical, then it does make it easier as you consider master's degree to specialize and be able to change and be fairly flexible because you have the basics.
My friend Liesl Folks, who used to be the dean of the School of Engineering, is now, I think, the provost at University of Arizona, always told me that mechanical engineering is the liberal arts of engineering. It's where that's the biggest cohort of engineering you'll find in almost any school, maybe outside of computer engineering or computer science. So if you're not sure, try mechanical engineering because you're probably going to like it.
And as a total aside on that, it's also going to be great for your network. One of the reasons I love my mechanical engineering degree is, at least if I say that I was part of ASME, I have hundreds of thousands of more people who I can interact with easily versus nuclear degree where there's like 10 of us. So really highly recommend, if you haven't picked yet, mechanical is a great place to get started.
And not to, but to onto that point about network. So I don't know what you guys are doing, Andrew, as far as the panelists, but if you want to share our information so that everyone has it, then I would highly suggest the students that are involved, go ahead and add. I mean, I'm willing to just add me to your LinkedIn network, okay? And every time you have an opportunity to be in front of and listen to panels like this, these people have all taken their time and are willing to help. That's your first place. So keep growing your network as you grow, because that's how you're going to be able to develop through your engineering career. So find the people that are willing to help, reach out to them, make those contacts, and continue to foster that all through your career. Just like Sam said, I mean, as part of ASCE, doing clubs, those are the people that you're going to move up with, those people even in your class. They'll be the city engineer. They'll be the provost at the school. That's how you're going to get the contacts and the positions, and you're going to be working with. It's not always going to be, oh, my dad's generation is in charge and I'm working. That it's going to change. Your generation will be in charge, and you'll be part of that network.
All right. If any other panelist viewers have any other questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or if any other panelists have anything else that they'd like to add to this discussion, whether if it's related to this panel, whether it's related to the last question specifically, any like points, tips, or anything like that, go ahead and share that now.
So yeah, I want to just add one more piece of advice, and I think, you know, one of the conversations I heard a couple of suggestion points about grad degrees and going into leadership roles. I get asked this question a lot, and should I go, you know, once I get my BS degree, let's say you go to I'm just picking UB because it's a local school, we all know. Let's say I go to UB and I get my BSME, should I go straight to get my MBA? And a lot of people think they want to do that. And my answer is absolutely not. I think that's a terrible path, me personally. And the reason I say that is what that says to me is, and I ask questions, well, why do you want to get an MBA? They said, well, I want to be the manager. And I said, well, wait a minute, you want to be the boss? You've never even done the work. So what you're saying is you want to skip over that experience of actually doing the engineering and just go to grad school so you can become the boss before you even know how to do the engineering. And it does not serve you well. I think if you went straight to a master's degree in engineering, absolutely, great approach. If you want to get an MBA, I suggest go do that while you're working. And a lot of times too, if you're interested in a master's degree, do that while you're working, because a lot of companies will actually pay tuition reimbursement. And there's this real learning that you get when you're in the workforce and you're getting graduate training, you know, at a slower pace. It takes you a little longer, but there's so much more that you get out of it when you're learning these high-end things in grad school and you're actually using it in the workforce. And I find that to be a really, really good connection of you know, doing those things in parallel.
I'm sorry to chime in again, but I did my combined degree, so Bachelor's of Engineering with my MBA, and I completely agree with Sean. As an engineering student, you think engineering's the hardest thing you're doing and the most important, and that's your main focus. And so while I was taking my business classes, they were not a priority. Engineering was a priority because that degree was more important to me at the time. And now that I own my own business, if I would have paid attention in accounting for my MBA instead of just being able to do it because it was math and getting through it, I think it would have been proved a little more helpful. So I would definitely say that time in between is good But the MBA is also a great degree, regardless of what you end up doing. If it is something you want, it's a great backup. And that's why I did it. I was a backup degree. Like, well, what if I don't really want to do engineering with an MBA? I can go get a job anywhere pretty much, because middle management exists in any career field. So that, that was what I had originally thought. And then I knew I was going to own my own company someday. I just didn't know what it would be. So yeah, I would echo the space in between degrees, especially on the between the business and the technical degree, is good. And depending on your career field, I sit on a lot of panels at UB and roundtables, and we get that question of, should I stay for my master's right away? And I think, again, it depends on your discipline. So for civil, if you're going to be a structural engineer and you're doing your PE path, then yeah, you stay there and you get it. But there's a lot of civil side work that doesn't require the master's degree, and it might not bring that much added value to what you're doing. I mean, and again, this all depends on what you want to do. I mean, not to knock the degree, especially sitting on the advisory board, where it's very beneficial for schools to have master's and PhD students. So just got to consider what you want.
I have a suggestion to make, and you're at least 4 years away from having to make this decision, but regarding the path to getting your PE, professional engineering license, the first step is taking what's called the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, which is typically taken your senior year of college or shortly after graduating. So even if you don't really think you might want to be a licensed professional engineer, I would strongly suggest still taking that exam, just because that's when all that content's going to be fresh in your mind. And I've come across a few engineers who didn't end up taking it, who now kind of regret it, and it's going to be that much harder to try to study for and take and pass that Fundamentals of Engineering exam if you're several years out of school.
Yeah, I agree. I took time between my technical degree and my MBA, and I would recommend doing that as well. I will say this, though. This is the last thing I wanted to say was the engineering degree helped me to get to where I am. I'm president and CEO. I never dreamed of doing this, but being able to problem solve and being able to, those critical thinking skills that I got from engineering got me here. And I have engineers running my operations, running my marketing, running every aspect of this business. In fact, I have an engineer in my accounting group because of those skills. So you see the diversity of the people on this panel. I think being an engineer is awesome. I think you're able to do a lot of things, just not engineering.
All right, it is now 1:02 p.m., meaning that is unfortunately the end of our panel discussion today. I'd just like to thank you all panel members, all attendees, for coming out and taking an hour out of your day to help all the high school students on this today. And thank you very much.